1844. Americans had a month to decide the 11th President of the United States. Between the perennial Whig Henry Clay and the dark horse Democrat James Polk, the Electoral College revealed a divisive victory, 170 for Polk to 105 for Clay. Yet the popular vote posed a divided nation, 50% Polk, 40% Clay. The other 2%? James Birney, the candidate of the Liberty Party, who ran in favor of abolition. While such a figure concedes the hostility of the antebellum era, Birney made history. In New York, should 5,106 of Birney's voters would have switched to Clay, Clay would have won New York, and in turn the United States presidency with 141 electoral votes. Birney would mark the first time a third-party candidate affected the outcome of a United States presidential election, planting a hopeful seed to the beginning of emancipation realized 20 years later. Yet Birney's story mirrors that of countless other individuals who were crucial to the achievement of these long-denied freedoms. For Birney himself was an abolitionist journalist and the editor of The Philanthropist, through which he gave voice to the Rally for Freedom. And across the North, there were dozens of these newspapers, the most famous being The Liberator, pioneered by William Lloyd Garrison. When introducing the paper in 1831, Garrison wrote, assenting to the self-evident truth maintained in the American Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, I shall strenuously contend for the immediate enfranchisement of our slave population. For the crusade for abolition undertaken by these writers was rooted in a vision of freedom bounded by our nation's founding document, the Declaration of Independence.
Something that on July 4th they voted yes, and they voted right away to send it out. They said, we want this to go to the states, we want this to go to the army, we want people to know what we're fighting for. And that's really what they needed, because if you pull back to the big picture in the summer of 1776, we're not winning the war.
And in the fight for abolition, newspapers became their form of declaration. Cheap to print and widely circulated, abolitionist papers carried moral arguments across the North. Frederick Douglass, once enslaved, became one of the abolitionist movement's most powerful voices through his newspaper, the North Star, a name drawn from the guiding light used by those escaping slavery.
So Douglass follows along, really following Garrison's example in first and foremost trying to expose this is what slavery is really like. We're going to make it impossible for you to ignore these facts. And so large parts of these newspapers consisted of reports of brutality.
And while history remembers these writers as heroes, antebellum America often viewed them as radicals. Absolute abolitionists were a small minority, dismissed amid broader calls for gradual emancipation, colonization, or the preservation of the status quo.
It's so important for us to remember that to be an abolitionist at that point in history was to be a radical. Most white Northerners were very comfortable with the existence of slavery. Many who opposed it for various reasons still did not think it should be abolished.
Invoking the language of freedom also came with real danger. In 1837, Elijah Lovejoy, editor of the St. Louis Observer, was killed by a pro-slavery mob while defending his printing press, a stark reminder of the risks tied to dissent. And abolitionists were not the only ones invoking America's founding language. Pro-slavery newspapers like the Charleston Mercury also appealed to liberty and rights, revealing a central contradiction of the era. The same ideals could be used to argue both for freedom and against it. But in the same way the Declaration of Independence challenged a tyrannical government, abolitionist writers turned its language inward against America itself. They echoed its promises of liberty and equality to question a nation that upheld freedom while sustaining slavery. This was democracy in its most basic form, speaking publicly, in print, against an unjust hierarchy. And so, although Birney's 2% of the popular vote revealed the abolitionist movement's small beginnings, its influence far exceeded electoral support. Abolitionist newspapers transformed the Declaration of Independence from a historical text into a moral weapon, using its promise of equality and natural rights to challenge slavery and sustain hope amid resistance. For the Declaration of Independence itself is a reminder that,
as a nation of free men, we must live through all times or die by suicide.